Hey, so just a heads up, this video will contain spoilers for some of your favourite Dungeons & Dragons adjacent or inspired media. Dungeons & Dragons. A fantasy tabletop role-playing game first published in 1974 that became an infamously popular pastime for niche circles and subcultures throughout the decades. The game consists of a few key factors: the Dungeon Master, or DM, who is the key storyteller, as well as the judge, jury, and executioner of all actions within the game, a handful of colourful multi-sided dice for various actions and consequences, and a group of people to play with. Outside of that, while there are official guidebooks and monster manuals, the only other thing you really need is imagination and a willingness to have a fun time. Its popularity and early success led to similar game systems being produced to try and beat it out, but even in spite of its competitors, D&D has remained the top dog in its own corner of the tabletop market. The most popular rendition of the game is the 5th edition, with this one being the most accessible and streamlined, making it easier for newer players to get into and also allow for a more pointed focus on storytelling within the game, which is the biggest draw for many. So you all might hate me for this, but I've never actually played regular D&D. Don't get me wrong, I've played a bunch of different tabletops in my time: Call of Cthulhu, World of Warcraft, Shiver, tabletop Skyrim. I had an Argonian mage called Gizzard the Lizard Wizard, it was great, as well as several homebrews, but 5th edition just never seemed to be one that my game groups were interested in because they were always wanting to try something different with every campaign we ran, so I just never really got the chance to be properly stuck into it. But that's not to say that I haven't been exposed to the massive impact it's had on popular culture in the last decade or so, despite never having played it. D&D kind of used to be that thing that unpopular nerds would be outcasted for as recently as the 2000s, but once the 2010s hit and internet and fandom culture especially became its own looming entity for many users, the game and a lot of tabletops in general experienced a huge surge in sales and intrigue among the general population. This is likely attributed to mainstream examinations of nerd culture, such as The Big Bang Theory and Stranger Things, as well as smaller pockets of D&D derived or inspired media cropping up and carving out their own internet spaces. And which media, you may ask? Well, we're going to take a look at some today. How do you do, fellow nerds? My name is fionapollo, and today I'm joined by a special guest. Some of you may already recognize him as the voice of Bubblegum in my little indie series Mint and Friends.
Hi.
And together we're looking at our top picks for Dungeons & Dragons being showcased in popular media. Before we begin, please note that these are our own personal picks. It's not an official list, so if you have your own picks, then feel free to drop them in the comments. Now, I think we all know the drill from here. Come on. You all knew this was coming, let's not be coy. Hobbies like D&D might seem like they involve a lot of maths and calculations, but it also heavily relies on your imagination and creativity as well to actually make the game fun. How else are you going to cultivate all that rich world building and those interesting entourages you get to play as? Living in a bubble of only specific inspirations and preferences will also only get you so far. It takes variety to truly shake things up and keep both games and life interesting. So if you're looking for somewhere to expand your creative knowledge, then look no further than today's sponsor, Craftsy. Craftsy is an online learning platform exclusively dedicated to the arts, crafts, and creative pursuits, where you can find a whole range of informative courses and classes whether you're looking to pick up a new skill or shopping around for a casual hobby. With over 2,000 classes in 20 categories, there is bound to be something that speaks to your inner creative. You can find courses on drawing, painting, embroidery, jewelry making, woodworking, photography, and many more. I myself have been trying to look for more hobbies that fall outside of content creation, and my peace of mind has improved so much as a result. For my birthday last month, actually, we went to a workshop all about making Japanese wreaths, so I thought it would be cool to check out Craftsy's flower arranging courses, which obviously then led me to checking out the course Flower Arranging by Christina Stembel and Rhiannon Smith. And if there's anything you're unsure of, or you just want to discuss the course with someone, you can not only connect with fellow members, but also gain access to live stream channels where the course experts share their tips, answer questions, and engage with the Craftsy community in real time. So if all that sounds like a worthy pursuit, then please check Craftsy out. The first 1,000 people to click the link in the video description will get an entire year of premium membership to Craftsy for a staggeringly low fee. Happy crafting!
Fantasy Costco, where all your dreams come true. Got a deal for you.
I don't think that in good conscience I could discuss this topic without delving into one of the first properly D&D inspired media that I got truly obsessed with, and that honour goes to the Adventure Zone Balance Arc. The Adventure Zone is a podcast hosted by the McElroy brothers, Griffin, Justin, and Travis, and their dad Clint, as they spin truly gripping and hilarious campaigns that often include high fantasy and higher profile characters and NPCs alike. When I was into the Adventure Zone, it was right at the beginning during the first arc called Balance, focusing on the fabulous elf wizard Taco, dwarf cleric Merle, and human fighter Magnus as they work to retrieve powerful and dangerous artifacts for a mysterious organization called the Bureau of Balance. Since the Balance arc, they have also tried out different types of fantastical settings and tabletop systems, including Fate, Monster of the Week, and Urban Shadows. But Balance proved to be a huge jumping-off point for the series, and is attributed to being one of the many big D&D adjacent series that reinvigorated interest in the game during the 2010s. What I really love about this arc in particular is that while it was very clearly an attempt for the McElroys to get a feel for how future campaigns could go, it really manages to demonstrate just how immersive and imaginative you can make your world building as opposed to just slaying dragons or stealing from corrupted lords. And while there's no issue with that, and that in itself is super fun, it can be limiting if that's all you allow yourself to do. But Griffin as the DM in this arc really thinks outside the box to subvert this with each campaign the trio find themselves in. We had a Mad Max inspired race in the campaign Petals to the Metal, a sadistic but dazzling game show down in Wonderland during the Suffering game, and they were in a race against time, except not really, in a shambly old western town during the 11th hour. Not only that, but the boys also weren't afraid to portray characters that were far outside of who they were as people as well, which to me really illustrates the game's capability of putting players in the shoes of others. Taco, for example, who was a fan favourite and played by Justin, is gender non-conforming, wears skirts, and dates another guy, which was still a rarity in canon throughout media at its time of release. And the Adventure Zone does this extremely well, not even just with playable characters, but the NPCs are also widely loved by fans, from the mysterious yet hilarious Bureau Director Lucretia, the cool yet goofy Grim Reaper stand-in Kravitz, and the determined, snarky girl boss that is Loop. Oh, and also Barry Blue Jeans. He actually becomes very important later on. No, I'm not kidding. Overall, I think this series is a fantastic first impression for those wanting to know how Dungeons & Dragons can be adapted for different world settings and scenarios, but also the podcast format really worked to the strength of fans being able to apply their own imaginations to everything from character designs, fan art, theories, animatics. There are so many good animatics on YouTube, check them out. The whole shebang.
Now I know using a big bat instead of a dog is a stupid idea.
First off, big thanks to Fiona Apollo for letting me voice my absurd opinions that you will be subject to. Delicious in Dungeon is a scrumptious manga series following a group of adventurers, Laios, Chilchuk and Marcil. After delving deep within a dungeon, the group find themselves losing a battle to a red dragon. Laios' sister, Fallon, teleports everyone but herself and their supplies to safety out of the dungeon. Unfortunately, as she did this, she ended up being devoured by said dragon at the same moment. With that, our adventurers find themselves with half a party, having no supplies, and being flat broke. After much begrudging deliberation, Laios convinces Chilchuk and Marcil to eat the monsters of the dungeon to sustain themselves. Regardless, this will forego the need to restock and quickly let the three return to Fallon before she is digested. The three fortunately run into Senshi on the first level, Senshi being a dwarf that has been living off the fat of the dungeon for quite some time. With Senshi's monster cooking expertise, the group can press forwards in order to save Fallon. Now I know it's not necessarily D&D related, but I love how it uses the monsters and the high fantasy setting in new and imaginative ways. Much like how the players can make all manner of things happen in the way the DM wasn't expecting. Take for example, Senshi making a farm from golems to grow plants, and the explanation provided by Senshi as to why it works so well. First off, it's just a great use of a golem. A golem is defined as a mass of a particular material that forms into usually humanoid shape and can move due to magical influence. Golems are autonomous. They will protect themselves and thus the produce Senshi planted. This takes care of both pest control and potential thieves. On top of that, the golems being magical creatures with mana flowing through them gives a great reason as to why the plants would yield so well in the first place. Magic, baby! I also adore that it's a wonderful way to have a creature that wouldn't be able to be consumed normally, providing food for the party. Very imaginative and logical. Speaking of logical, I love the way the cooking is presented, especially in the anime. Take a plethora of classical fantasy monsters that you would encounter in D&D or otherwise, and break them down into their parts, as well as how people will consume them. Things like removing the poison of a basilisk, so that we wouldn't be frozen like a statue after one bite, or using many meaty parts of a kelpie, like how we would cows and pigs, as well as its mane, which is practically seaweed. One of my favourite examples is how they eat animated armour. How would they go about that exactly? Guess you'll have to read and watch it yourself. To summarise, I love how this series makes me consider things about D&D that I never would have thought of to begin with. I wonder what goblin flesh tastes like.
No, that wasn't for you. Did that count as a question?
Yes.
Damn it.
Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a fantasy heist comedy film officially licensed by the Dungeons & Dragons brand that was released in 2023, and this film This film is probably the most true-to-life adaptation of the games as we could have possibly gotten in theaters, in my opinion. I love this film so much. The premise is about as convoluted as you would expect from a franchise that relies on collaborative storytelling between friends, but the general gist is that our main characters Bard Edgin and Barbarian Holger were imprisoned for 2 years following a failed heist. And after escaping to locate Edgin's beloved daughter Kira, come to find that she is in the care of their ex-companion Forge, who is now the lord of the fictional city Neverwinter and is in cahoots with Safina, a secret red wizard who got them imprisoned in the first place and whose kin murdered Edgin's wife. In order to defeat them both, they assemble a band of colourful characters including the wizard Simon from their last attempt, Doric the druid, and Zenk the paladin to retrieve the Tablet of Resurrection, to prove to Kira that she's been lied to and to reunite both her and Edgin as a family. The amount of D&D Easter eggs and homages in this film to the original game is a delight to see, and with every watch you discover more and more of them. Like for example, if you look at the action scenes, most if not all actions taken by the characters are exactly 6 seconds long, which is a rule within the actual game itself. This homage to the original game also works in favour to how the group are able to find really weird workarounds to certain issues, such as finding their way into a treasury by disguising a portal as a painting, or by Doric transforming into a snake when they get stuck in a gelatinous cube and using the space made by the original form to burrow their way out. What I also find absolutely hilarious about this film is that much of the comedy is also derived from how the tabletop banter between players and the DM would go, such as when they are using a spell to resurrect fallen soldiers to ask questions to, except these corpses keep answering every question that Edgin also asked the group as well, and they keep having to dig up corpses to try again. And how could we not discuss one of the most iconic instances of the long-form tabletop experience, when that one friend who is never around for most of the sessions makes a surprise appearance on a quest, only to near enough carry the whole group, complete the objective, and then wander off into the distance to never be seen again for another month worth of sessions. That is pretty much encapsulated by the inclusion of Zenk, who heroically aids the band for like one section of the film and then disappears over the horizon once his job is done. If you're a fan of the game and enjoy action, adventure, comedy, and some heartstring pulling all wrapped up in D10 wrapping paper, then this is the film for you and I would heavily recommend it.
Don't do this. Just go with it, Roy.
For this next segment, I will be focusing on the IT Crowd, a British sitcom that follows the antisocial antics of Moss, Roy and Jen as they work in the IT department for Renham Industries. More specifically, I'll target the episode Jen the Fredo. Now, throughout the whole show, we learn that Moss is a stereotypical nerd, great with computer programming and not so much with social programming. Roy is something of a hopeless romantic, able to converse with and date women, but is always unsuccessful due to his own flaws. Now, Jen, on the other hand, is actually socially adept, but naively uses that skill to get positions she is woefully underqualified for. Positions such as Entertainment Manager, which sees Jen having to accommodate for 3 business associates of Renham Industries. We know full well what entertainment these sleazeballs are after, but Jen thinks it would be a good idea to take them to see a more thought-provoking play. When that fails, she has to resort to forcing them to play D&D with Moss and Roy. Now, Moss, being the DM, is fully in his element and does not falter at the rowdy boys' complaints and marches forwards with the game. At first, Phil and the Johns are reluctant and uninterested, but as the game progresses, we see the 3 louts fully engrossed and engaging with the story. It's played for laughs, but I think it's such a great representation of first-time players that get into D&D. Now, I'm not saying everyone will enjoy it, but when you let yourself be immersed and become your character, it's truly magical. We spend the whole episode with these 3 businessmen that are arrogant and obnoxious to see them excitable and engrossed by the end of the game. That is the true magic of role-playing. But wait, there's more. Roy spends this episode depressed that the woman he was dating for months has left him without a word. He genuinely thought she was the one for him, and the abrupt nature of how she leaves devastates him. We don't see this woman in the series at all, especially because of Roy's god-level Photoshop skills, but is empathized how much she meant to him throughout this episode. As mentioned before, Moss is in his element as DM. Normally, any attempts to console Roy flop spectacularly, despite Moss's earnest effort. Roy even states in this episode that he appreciates Moss's attempts and believes Moss is no good at it and would just make things worse. So, using an NPC, Moss speaks to Roy mid-game. He has a heart-to-heart with Roy, but not as himself. As an elven queen that cruelly jilted Roy's character not 3 moons ago. Despite Roy's protests, Moss assures Roy to follow along for now, and after letting his guard down, Roy spews his grievances forth. He tells Moss exactly what he feels and why he feels that way. Afterwards, Moss lets Roy know what he had been wishing he heard, what he needs to hear. Goodbye. Again, it's played for laughs, but take away the laughter and you're left with a genuinely heartwarming scene of an awkward man confronting his friend the only way he knows how. I love how Moss, embodying a character, can actually find the right words to say to Roy, and that Roy accepts the absurdity of this and confides in Moss regardless. This show is amazing and uses a role-playing game scenario for so much, despite it being the focus of less than half of an episode. This is why the IT crowd is so good.
Before we go any further, I'd also like to give a shout out to some honourable mentions provided by some of you watching.
There better be something protective under this tunic. Oh, no, there isn't!
Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons from Gravity Falls. In Season 2, Episode 13, Dipper becomes obsessed with the board game Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. But can't seem to convince anyone to play it with him because of the emphasis on maths and nerdiness involved. Lucky for him, his nerdy Uncle Ford also used to play the game and makes the mistake of showing Dipper an infinity-sided die that has an endless amount of possibilities depending on its roll. After an argument mid-game and a scuffle with Grunkle Stan, the die gets rolled by accident and summons Probabilitor, the Annoying, who transports Dipper and Ford into a game for their lives with Stan and Mabel as the players. Eventually, with a generous helping of combined imagination and trickery, they manage to outwit Probabilitator. I'm sorry, are these names trying to tongue-tie me because it's working? And banish him back to his own dimension.
I can't even tell if any of you are acting strange because you've been replaced or because this group is full of weirdos.
Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is a role-playing video game released in 2023 where players can create one or more characters and form a party along with a number of pre-generated characters to explore the game's story. The game is actually based on one of D&D 5th edition's modules, Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, and takes place just months after the events of this particular installment in the franchise. The game also allows players to take one of their characters and team up online with others to form a party. The story is set primarily in the Sword Coast in Western Faerun, but also encompasses various settings within Faerun, including Emerald Grove, Moonrise Towers, the Shadow-Cursed Lands, and of course the titular Baldur's Gate. While the NPCs and playable characters are pre-generated, there is still plenty of room to make the story truly your own, and the game has won the admiration of many a gamer and tabletop appreciator alike.
A 20-sided dice? How big is that thing?
It's normal sized. It just has 20 sides.
Voltron Legendary Defenders. In episode 46 of Voltron, the Paladins indulge in an Altean game of Monsters and Mania, headed by Koran, which bears a striking resemblance to the game we all know and love, and also happens to take some inspiration from World of Warcraft as well. The choice of character for each Paladin is pretty interesting, with Pidge being a dwarf, Hunk the monk, Allura an archer, Lance as a ninja, and Shiro as a paladin, of course.
Feeling like a total boomer. I'm a boomer and some bloomers, and I'm over here and I'm like a total idiot or whatever, so I eat your letters, okay? I eat your letters.
Dimension 20. Dimension 20 is a tabletop role-playing game show created and hosted by Brennan Lee Mulligan as the show's regular dungeon master. The usual seasons, featuring a core cast of players and 17 or more episodes, are also interspersed with shorter side quests that feature a rotating cast.
A cup or two of beer, your finest ale, sir.
I need to genuinely ask you this for how I roleplay him later. Is that enough to get drunk off?
Not really.
For a lizard, maybe.
Dungeons and Daddies. Dungeons and Daddies is an unscripted comedy podcast all about 3 dads and their sons from our regular human world who are Jumanji'd into the world of D&D while on their way to a football tournament. Season 1 focuses on the dads' efforts to rescue their kids, while the second season instead focuses on their grandkids who are trying to rescue them after they mysteriously disappeared with no explanation. Season 3 takes a bit of a pivot from this and instead not only focuses on the fictional city of Peachyville in the 1950s, but also incorporates Call of Cthulhu's game system instead, which is very fascinating.
1, 2, 3, 4. Give me a tug.
The Legend of Vox Machina is an animated action-packed series created for Prime Video and is the product of the massively successful Critical Role series' first campaign. The series focuses on the 7-man band consisting of persnickety human gunslinger Percy, cunning elven ranger and rogue twins Vex and Vax, righteous gnome cleric Pike, hulking Goliath barbarian Grog, socially awkward half-elf druid Caliph, and the suave gnome bard Scanlan. The show itself functions as a sort of prequel during its first couple of episodes to help new viewers better understand the story who may not be privy to D&D's affinity for diving right into quests and campaigns without much background info on how this group came together. Once we hit episode 3 though, we are well and truly in the thick of the Briarwood Act of the original series, where the gang face off against the evil lord and lady of the same name in honor of the town of Whitestone, which coincidentally is Percy's home, and thus the first season focuses on him especially. The series also pulls at various interpersonal threads between the characters, including Vex and Vax's goal of confronting the dragon that killed their family, and the touching friendship between Pike and Grog, for example. I honestly love how far Critical Role has come. You can really see how the web series improves over time, so much to the point where it's now its own show, with even more on the way. The series was originally funded via Kickstarter following the major success of the Critical Role series, where professional voice actors undertake various campaigns with each other, and the Prime series has thus far released 3 seasons, with a 4th being greenlit. The original Kickstarter only had a goal of a single 22-minute series, but after garnering over 10 times the original goal, it was picked up by a streaming service and given the professional treatment. You can even feel Critical Role's influence on D&D. Matt Mercer does a phenomenal job as Dungeon Master, so it's no wonder that many want to hold that similar standard to him. It's honestly crazy and kind of inspiring to see how the talent and passion displayed by every member of Critical Role has brought them so far. It's also really nice to see that every member of the original cast came together to voice their original characters in the series itself, and the show has been praised for this, as the voice acting is naturally top-notch, but also the animation is fantastic, the writing is strong, and its faithfulness to the original campaign is appreciated by fans and praised by newcomers, who found it easier to get into the original web series as a result. This show is specifically geared towards adults and contains a lot of violence, gory battle scenes, and raunchy humor. Again, all the fixings of a fun campaign between friends all boxed up into an original series, so if you want a show that feels authentic to both the original Critical Role web series and the D&D tabletop experience, consider taking a look.
Honestly, I wouldn't last a day in prison with this face. Look at me. I'm a snack.
Well, I'd say that's about as many D&D inspired series as we can talk about for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed if you got this far. Not gonna lie, it was pretty fun to do something different this week that wasn't art drama. That stuff can really start to bog you down. So a big thank you to Ed for providing the premise for this video. Which D&D inspired series is your favourite? Was it one that we mentioned? Is it another one completely? Please let us know. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for videos or room for improvement on the channel, then please sound off in the comments. Personally, this made me want to go back and watch a couple of Adventure Zone animatics again. The 2010s really were a magical time for that. Nowadays, we seem to be reverting back into everything being cringe again, which, I've said it before, a person's inability to have fun will always be the real cringe. So go and play some tabletop games with your friends and be nerdy and free, alright? A big thank you to my wonderful patrons who help keep me motivated. Thank you to my YouTube peeps, Jesse Sparks, Manuel Legzom Gonzalez, Ash Valentine, Mystic Mind, Lauren R, Pedanticat, Ed Boy, Hero Sky Arts, Steph Goes Doodles, and Nombomb. And an extra special thank you to my indie production supporters, Morgan LaFay DeThin, Matty A, Kiyoshi, and Roundcat. If you'd like to become a patron yourself, a link to my page can be found in the description. Stay safe everyone, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye for now.